Hello, YouTube BitChute friends. I'm back on the blower. I had a strike against me for misinformation. I guess I have to be careful. YouTube might strike me again, and then it's curtains. But my commentary today is that even enlightened people with insight, for me, remain troublesome. Like I like this Jimmy Dore guy, and he kicks the shit out of Bill Gates and the Weffers and the Klaus Schwabs and all those types. He's on top of it. He's making sense, a lot of sense. So he's got this Dr. Bhattacharya on, and I've heard of him. He's a doctor. He comes out of the system. He comes out of the established consensual medical system, and he defends it and defends vaccines and all that kind of stuff. And okay, good, that's an opinion. But here's the problem I have with these enlightened people that have some insight. They seem to collapse under the pressure of the consensual. As much as he calls himself a dopehead comedian who exposes the bastards better than any of the consensual media, which to some extent is true, but then on the other hand, he's very reluctant to question the very essence or the basis of what we understand to be modern medicine, or the assumptions that are made, like infectious germ theory. It's a theory, right, people? It's not a fact. It's a theory. It's never been proven. And they talk about transmission and aerosol, and they talk about this mysterious virus that all of a sudden in the beginning of 2020 took over the entire world. And in my mind, let's say this is true. This was a mysterious virus that took everything over. Why pick on that one? They tend to, in the past, the consensual medical types have picked on from Ebola, which is vicious, and many things that manifest themselves in extreme. You look at the manifestations of certain diseases, they're terrifying, obviously. But the plan was to pick on this particular, or create a story around an illness that has a name. It's a beer virus, and it was picked to be the central story of the last 3 years. And even this mindful individual, I like Jimmy Dore, continues to propagate the story that comes out of this consensual institution. And when I say consensual, I'm very dubious in believing and trusting people, because there is obviously, history has shown us that there is such subterfuge in people that control things. When they accomplish to have a certain degree of influence and power, especially through money, but I think money is incidental to the very top of the owners, whoever they might be. Money is not an issue. It's the minions that are under their control that believe money is the most important thing to them. So Jimmy Dore comments on the fact that Bill Gates just buys all the media. MSNBC apparently is Microsoft NBC. So he creates platforms for himself to propagate his stories. And okay, but you can all understand this. Here's sort of where I'm becoming more of a contrarian, a kind of person who says, why are we even accepting certain the validity of certain aspects of a story which has never been proven? For example, transmission. And this Bhattacharya and Dore, they're all on board with this idea of infectious germ theory, that it comes through vapor and aerosol. Let's just listen. He exposes this Gates guy nicely in this clip here. He's like, yeah, he says he waves his hands, and whenever he waves his hands, he knows he's lying.
It wasn't until early February, when I was in a meeting, that experts at the foundation said, there's no way, there's been too much travel without diagnosis for us to contain this.
What is all this, and what is here's my theory, and you correct me because you're the doctor and I'm a comedian. My theory is that he's lying about when they knew they couldn't contain the virus. And he's saying that they couldn't contain the virus because so many people traveled without diagnosis, and that's why they can't. Not because of the idea that the vaccine doesn't stop transmission and contraction, but because people were traveling too much. That's the
Okay, now Jimmy has exposed the whole thing about injections preventing you from catching this mysterious beer virus or passing it on. This is now consensual, admitted by all the important people except YouTube, of course. I think YouTube still insists that it is able to, through injections, you're able to stop the transmission and contraction. You know, if you YouTube insists on that, and maybe they're right. You know, I have to say that because, like Jimmy Dore says, he has to say that injections are a great idea and blah 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 blah. But you know what? YouTube doesn't have a standard on questioning infectious germ theory because nobody, even people like Jimmy Dore, they're terrified of touching on this because it is so ingrained in the narrative of our culture. Our culture is so absorbed in itself. It needs to propagate something. Like they have to attach, even Jimmy has to attach himself, like this doctor, to his medical history of learning everything that was written in books that were actually, for the most part, it's all about memory. It's not about curing, it's about memory. So modern science, medicine, is never about understanding anything about anything. It's really how do you manipulate things to be the way you want them to be. So my position is that this beer virus was invented. They picked on it. Let's even say there is some version of a toxic response in a person that manifests itself in the lungs and it's respiratory and all this. This is like ancient. This is millions of years of stuff. But for some reason, they needed to pick on this one. And and then make it into something that may or may not be an illness that is confirmed in what if you go and you see somebody and they don't feel so good. My niece was not feeling so good. She was plugged up. It was terrible for 3 or 4 days, and then she got over it. And do I decide I'm going to pick on that particular manifestation of what she's going through and say, well, it's this or that? Well, they can claim anything they want because it's like my last video, plausible deniability. You can see it on BitChute. That got me the strike. Is plausible deniability is based on the idea that you have the field, you have the story that everybody accepts, and then out of that story, variations emerge, and you have plausible deniability because underneath, like Jimmy Dore, he subscribes to the idea of the infectious germ theory, and I can pick. You know, my niece is like down, struggling and overcoming something, which is clearing out her toxins in her body, and you can call it a beer virus. And unfortunately, she's decided, no, it's not a beer virus. You know, I've managed to be able to have a bit of influence on her, and she's not rushing out. Actually, I think she did do a testing, and of course, the testing is so ridiculous because the people who invented the test, Carrie Mullis, said you cannot identify an illness with the PCR test or any other kind of test that they're supposedly having. So that in itself contributes to the story. I don't think Jimmy Dore talks about the tests and exposes the tests. He should. I mean, he should. So my thought is, well, I'll go on video. I'll say what my thought is, but I'll let him continue a little bit for you to see how even the enlightened types who have insights just sort of drop the ball and they continue their story. The man's story, the owners get to continue their story. Here, wrong button. Here we go.
The reason he's saying so, and he's doing all the hand gestures, which makes me think he's lying. What do you have to say about that?
So, Jimmy, I think I've seen that clip. So, I think what he's referring to is February 2020.
Oh, so that's before we even had the vaccines.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So, I think what he's saying there is that by February 2020, the disease was everywhere.
Okay.
He's saying that he learned that in February 2020. Now, when I saw the Chinese outbreak in December and then into January 2020, I knew the disease was everywhere because it was very obviously spreading by aerosol. Like you remember?
Okay, now he's taking a position here, a doctor, spreading by aerosol based on what? some sort of video. He's going to say there was a video of a fan going and somebody fell or got it or didn't get it or whatever. So the story is propagated inadvertently, likely, or are these guys part of the narrative that we're supposed to absorb? Now, Jimmy is a contrarian. He's a pot-smoking, dope-head comedian, as he describes himself. Don't listen to me, but I make a lot more sense than any of the credible people who have PhDs and doctors, this and that, and I actually am more insightful than they are, but here they drop the ball. So here's this doctor saying, on a completely unproven theory, he's propagating the story by saying, well, this was an illness that was came out of China, and you know, I decide, yes, I'm going to pick on this spear virus too and say it's real and all that kind of stuff. And even if it is real, why pick on it? And if you look at the overall death counts, we're not looking at a 1918 100 million people situation, which was a significant rise in the number of deaths over a year and a half or two. You could literally look at something was going on that a lot of people were affected by and were inordinately dying or disproportionately dying compared to previous years. And this again, statistics don't confirm what he is saying, that this is an illness that we need to pick on because it's so extreme in its manifestations. Let's see what else he has to say.
Remember that there was a Chinese study where they showed like there's some restaurant, some guy
Yes.
outside the restaurant, and then all of a sudden somebody else that's outside the restaurant got it because there was some fanboy. Like, I saw that study. I thought, okay, this is everywhere. And then there was an outbreak in Iran. There was
oh, this is everywhere. So he calls this a study. Somebody has a video of somebody standing outside a restaurant and a fan blows and the guy inside has it, and then the guy standing outside gets a fan. And this is like unicorns and fairy tales that these intelligent people, this is where it breaks down for me. So I don't think, okay, a little more.
Outbreak, remember those early days, right? And so I'm like, there's no way to stop the disease from spreading. We just have to protect the people the most vulnerable. You could.
Okay, this is the consensual story, people. Oh, we just have to protect the vulnerable. Yeah, okay, fine, protect the vulnerable, but why pick on this particular manifestation of something in our bodies that has not, according to statistics, I can pull them up, it's not a 1918 type event. Where you can attach yourself to something that's happening and create theories around it, which is what they're doing. It's a continuous story building based on unicorns, like a video of a Chinese guy standing outside a restaurant. That's what he's saying. Okay, I'm gonna go on. I'll go on face. I'll go on my camera. So here's my issue. This is something that is so troubling. From the point of view that, as I said, intelligent, enlightened even, insightful people that have made commentary that I appreciate and that expose the bastards. I think this is very important to keep our eye on the ball. And what is the ball? It's like people trying to run away with having us believe a certain story. And whenever I see someone contribute to this without questioning, I don't mind them propagating an idea, as Jimmy Dore is doing here. The idea of infectious germ theory is totally accepted by this Bhattacharya guy as well, a well-educated person who's memorized enough of the medical books for him to get his stamp of approval from the owners. It all goes to the owners. You cannot contradict the owners. You cannot contradict anything. In fact, the highest form of human existence is to question and wonder about what it is that we are a part of. That is both from the point of view of this magnificent mystery that we're engaged in with part of, as well as our brothers and sisters who decide that they would like to run the roost without any question. And I don't mind people being in charge of things if they are legitimately. It's like if you're a firefighter and you know what you're doing, I want you to come and if my house, a neighbor's house, somebody is burning, you want the experts to come and help and do stuff. I am really on board with society in that sense, how we help each other in terms of the things we can do for each other. But then there is a segment to society that seems to have this peculiar notion that they cannot be questioned about anything, especially if it's been established for decades or hundreds of years, even thousands of years. Those things are never questioned. And if you do, you're categorized. Now, the favorite one is conspiracy. You're a conspiracy person. Considering how many conspiracies have been uncovered in the last 50, 60 years or more, how this is all coming to light, they're trying not to. I think the Kennedy papers are still sealed because the bastards are terrified of confirming they're gaslighting people, calling them something that they're doing. So anyway, my point about this is, like, even people that I like, they can have their opinion about something, but then not to bring in the possibility that something else may be at play. And this multi-level chess is very complex. So to just rest your laurels on a certain idea or a story is quite detrimental to your well-being, spiritual and physical. I think both are affected. We need to have this healthy contrarian nature, not okay. What I'm thinking is you don't want to be, I was going to say, just not for the sake of it, but it's almost like we're so far in the other direction now that I would say I highly endorse the idea just for the sake of it, because the world around us is so normalized around the madness that is going on without any question. People don't question. It's like even in Jimmy Dore, they talk about the mask idea, how this Dr. Bhattacharya said masks were never in any form able to prevent you from, in their theory, catching something, because people would get sick whether they wore masks or not. So they just brought this idea in order to have control over people. Obviously, this is how it works, right? You wanna have some kind of proof you're effective. So when Trudeau comes and says mandates, the reason he says it is he needs to confirm and have proof that X amount of people are on board. And a whole lot of people were on board. But here in Canada, there was a natural groundswell uprising against the madness. And it showed that I would easily say 30% of the people were not going along with it, which is a huge portion. It's not some fringe group, as our buddy Trudeau. By the way, I do Trudeau's every morning, and he has terrible breath. I no longer go. Anyway, I don't do number 2 anymore. I do Trudeau's, and I confirm he has bad breath. So yeah, my point. I think I'll end it with this notion, with this challenge to people, few people that come back and watch me. I've been struck. I've had strikes. I couldn't do anything, so that's why. Not the only reason why I haven't been posting, but anyway, the last video in 2022, I thought I'd say take a position, people, on all the things that are propagated that have, when you look into it, never been really proven. For example, infectious germ theory, funny things floating through the air and making you sick. It's never been proven. Don't take my word for it. Just check it out. And there are different people who have taken positions, one of them being Beauchamp, who said that there is a more likely cause for illness, and that is terrain theory, which makes a lot of sense to me, because the level of toxicity in bodies creates reactions, and the body needs to expunge and get rid of stuff, and viruses are a very good way to get rid of the toxins that we have in our body. And they're not evil things like Dr. Gates and his clan, and even this Bhattacharya and Jimmy Dore still want to feel like they're susceptible to some mysterious, vicious beer virus or other type of virus that is floating around in the air. So I can't do what Jimmy Dore does. He says I have to make certain statements when I contradict the consensual line. He still has to sell out. He's not willing to take a stand. He keeps saying this, how he has to comply with YouTube guidelines about positions he takes on the beer virus. And he comes out saying outrageous things that YouTube should cancel him for, but they let him go on. Because he's fundamentally, as I'm saying, he is Mr. Consensual. In essence, yes, he criticizes the bastards when they're so obviously wrong, but he's still going along with it, which is why YouTube, I think, just lets him continue to do what he does. That's what it feels like to me. So yeah, it's disturbing somewhat, and because I'd like to feel good about people rather than feeling bad about people. Not about the Gates types and the Soros and, the usual suspects. I don't mind feeling bad about those guys. I'm not enlightened enough to turn the other cheek. I'm sorry. That's a little weird. I understand why. I can see how that kind of may prevent someone from escalating into nuclear war. Okay, you turn the other cheek. If it takes turning the other cheek to prevent nuclear war, okay, I'll turn the other cheek. But generally speaking, it's like in a day-to-day sense, you take a position. We need to be honest with ourselves. Honesty is the greatest attribute, I think. Truth is, as I say, always a moving target. But if a person is honest, you can have a relationship. You can get through stuff with them. You can always figure out a way to sort something out, because within that honesty is integrity, a decency to want to be helpful, like society. The best part of society is like people are helpful to each other. And there are people who are saying stupid things and good things at the same time, and I have to sort that out for myself. It's like Jimmy Dore. I'm a little bit dubious because he's not looking at a nitty-gritty research contrarian position. Considering how contrarian he is against the owners, why hasn't he gone a little bit further and brought this into perspective? Why pick on this particular beer virus and escalate it and elevate it into exaltedness when there is plenty of other ones to go around? You see, it's not just the one. It's like and claims like plausible deniability. You create a story, you start the story, you have control of the story, you have total plausible deniability. You can make up anything around that story because you're the standard, you're the dictionary for that story. And that's how this whole entire shit show has worked. They are the dictionary of everything in this story, right down to infectious germ theory. It starts with infectious germ theory. That's what I think. So they can create this incredible hardship and anomaly in herding an entire population on Earth into a certain direction because they run the story on all the fundamental important levels. I highly recommend Anatoly Fomenko's investigation of chronologies, historical events. I think there is a very good indication. He has uncovered some very nefarious, dubious practices in what is understood to be the historical record. If you have a chance, check out Anatoly Fomenko. You can actually get it online. Look at my channel, just put in Fomenko, and there are links to online. He's put his books online. It's phenomenal, phenomenal research. So anyway, last day of the year. I wish everyone the very best, absolutely very best for the next year. I don't really have any predictions anymore because what appears to be my last point. Maria's always said to me, I was much more involved in trying to figure out what's going to happen tomorrow and all this kind of stuff. And nothing really ever happened in the way that I thought it would. There are maybe a kind of blanketing. The blanketing of understanding what's going to happen is to be as self-sufficient as possible. I think that's a very good idea no matter what. So if it takes if you're thinking about the future being this or that, usually it has to do with calamity, likely. Or if you like making money, you say, oh, if I invest in this in the future, I'll have lots of money here. Well, I think there is a sort of rising ship philosophy that I subscribe to, because the owners run the whole show in that way. So if you get on that owner rising ship thing, you'll do well. If you don't jump on the owner's ship, you're not going to do so well. So my idea about predicting anything is off the table. I have no idea whether people say, oh, the collapse, oh, the reset, all this shit. People are taking themselves so seriously on understanding what the owners are up to. And this is such a long-term, it appears to me anyway, this is a very long-term plan. We're not talking about a few years, months, years. We're talking about decades and possibly even centuries of certain kinds of initiatives and planning that direct the future that we're going to experience. And the only thing that we have as individuals is to be as independent from all the things that we're told and imposed on us as possible. And it's up to a point only, ever, because we're social beings. We rely on each other, and I think that's fabulous. But we shouldn't rely on that sort of top dog owner bastards running the show and telling us how to live and not to live. I much prefer to be assisted by someone I know personally, and we accomplish something together. I think that is a noble human. It is a virtue in human beings to be helpful to each other. So I'm not making any predictions, resets and all that. I do. Okay, I'll make one prediction. What I perceive since the trucker convoy in Canada, I think the owners have realized the support is not as thorough as they believed it to be. In other words, the conditioning of the population has not extended quite far enough. I think the convoy showed this. And with the convoy, there were definite results in terms of the aggressive nature of the owners who direct the policy, the story. There was a slight, some might even say significant, withdrawal from the narrative in terms of what it is that they want us to do. I did find, however, that as far as the government side of things has pulled back, the corporate, on the other hand, are picking up where the government left off. I was at an ophthalmologist, had a hell of a time. I said, I'm not wearing the mask. They accommodated me, but they kept on pestering me when I was inside their halls, their corporate halls. This guy ran his name is Patodia. Like I say, he accommodated me. He has this outfit in Sarnia that is he has, I think, like 12 or 14 sub offices that he works continuously. He's one guy with 10 nurses, and he works. It's phenomenal. I mean, this is a one-man operation. That's just phenomenal. I'm sitting maskless. Everybody is like running around like a bunch of lemmings with their cloth diapers over their face. And I'm sitting there, and they're kind of looking at me funny and saying, oh, every single one said, well, why aren't you? Why aren't you? I said, yeah. I just ignore them. So eventually, I'm sitting there for like 10, 15 minutes, went through my procedure. The nurse did her procedure for like 5, 10 minutes. And then I'm waiting, and it's like 10 minutes, 15. So I go out to the desk, and I say, listen, can you give me an idea how long, it's going to be? And one of the nurses comes in and says, why aren't you doing them up? I said, look, stop it. Obviously I'm standing here because you let me in. So stop this. I just like to know how long I need to wait. So she says to me, well, if you were wearing the mask, we could get you in much faster. And I said, okay, what does that mean? Get me in faster. Well, you're going to have to wait maybe an hour, hour and a half. I said, what? Are you out of your mind? With a mask, I get in a few minutes without a mask, hour and a half. Are you trying to punish me? You know you make no sense, I said. So this was like a weird kind of confrontation. I said, look, you booked me, you made accommodations, and now you're saying, personally, this is not from your corporate headquarter guy. You're saying, oh no, we're not going to treat you because you're not doing what we want you to do. Anyway, it turns out I said, listen, I'm not hanging around. You either treat me in a reasonable amount of time, or I'm out of here. I'm leaving. So anyway, she said, oh, you know, we can't. Blah, blah, blah. So I said, I'm going to go outside, get a breath of fresh air for 5 minutes and come back. You decide what you want to do. Anyway, he took me within 10 minutes, and he had a little spiel too. He said, why aren't you wearing a mask? I said, you really want to know? He said, no. And then he said, well, you know, my wife has asthma and she wears a mask. And I should have said to him, being a doctor, I would be embarrassed to admit that. I should have said this to him, but I said, hey, just do your treatment. Look at me. I needed something from the guy, obviously. So, you know, when you need something, you got to make accommodations. He was helping me. And I felt like saying, that's a disgrace. That is disgraceful on your part to say you're making your wife who has asthma, who has a problem breathing through a mask, you're making her wear this thing based on a fictitious beer thing that's going around. So anyway, that was my encounter with the corporates who are picking up the baton, who are picking up where the government left off, which is, that's Mussolini. That's government and corporates coordinating their effort against the population. It's called fascism. So the corporates in Canada, at occasion, when they have the opportunity, are feeling entitled to enforce something, you know, that the government started. Anyway, why did I bring that up? That was, oh yes, the prediction. My thought for 23 then would be that this corporate side is likely going to kick in, not the government side. Although the government will be very favorable towards anyone that propagates the company line. If Trudeau comes out, we're with you. You hear this guy, he is so insincere. He oozes insincerity. I can guarantee this every morning when I do my Trudeau. He oozes bad breath and insincerity. So whenever a corporation will kick in to endorse and support all these activities, the government doesn't have to do it, the corporates do it. And I think this will be more over the next few years. This will become more evident. That's my suspicion. The Great Reset shit and the cliff high crap and all that stuff and things falling apart and silver at $600 and all of this. Eventually, possibly, yes. Maybe sooner than later. But this kind of epic collapse stuff, I don't see it. I think it's more of a Rome took like 200-300 years to fall completely. It was brutal, horrible, I think, for a longer period of time. It didn't, and then at the end, I think it went very quickly when the barbarians came across the mountains and chased the remaining owner oligarch bastards in Rome into the Venetian swamps, where they huddled among all the mosquitoes and infestations, and they emerged out of the swamp. The Roman owners emerged out of the swamp to recreate themselves in what we know now to be like the WEF and the WHO and the nuclear cartels and the banking cartels. It goes back. The barbarians didn't finish off the owners. They had the chance in like 400 something AD to sort of put the final nail into their coffin, but they didn't pursue them into the swamps of Venice, and as a result, we're ending up, I mean, talk about a long-term plan, 1,500 years later or more. It's like we're benefiting from the mistakes of my clan, the Huns, what were they? The barbarians, the Germanic tribes that finally put an end to the Roman oligarchy. So that's my prediction. Have a fabulous 2023. I think I'll be around. Most likely still. I'll make my, I'll post every now and then. And I hope you enjoy it. And again, all the best.